There are the details of the trade that went down officially 1 week ago today. Obviously, Russell Wilson now a member of the Broncos. Check out his Instagram story for highlights of him already in a Broncos helmet throwing to his receivers. Here is Pete Carroll, who was making the media rounds in Seattle yesterday, elaborating on the breakup with Russell Wilson.
I had no intention of making a move at all while guys were under contract and we were pleased with what was going on and all. So I fought for the logic of that for a good while and until it wasn't meaningful anymore, to stick with that.
You've expressed to us that Russell wasn't willing to re-sign. Had that not been the case, would you have been willing to make him the highest paid player in football, knowing the cap implications and all that goes with doing that?
Well, we had done that already. We've done that before, That certainly would have been something we would have been thinking about. That's a possibility. So we would have gone through it to the end of the discussion to see if it was the right thing for us. That was a possibility.
You did it for a quarterback that was 5 years younger. Would you have done it for a quarterback 5 years older?
I don't know. They don't have to make that decision now, so I won't call it. But like I said, we would consider all of the options for sure.
Look, this is the core of the problem. I'm glad we played that clip. Well done, Pete, pulling that one, because at the end of the day, the reason Russell Wilson is not a member of the Seahawks is because they kept paying him like a franchise quarterback, but not playing him like a franchise quarterback. At some point, the rubber was going to meet the road on this issue when Mark Rodgers, who has one client in the NFL and can drive a hard bargain without regard to any consequences on his broader practice, when he showed up next year and said, I want $55 million a year, at some point the Seahawks are going to say, we can't justify giving your guy that much money because he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. We don't use him that way. We can't keep doing this. And I think everyone recognized that next year was when it was all going to fall apart. That was when this progression of $20 million a year to $35 million a year to $55 million a year, that's when it doesn't work anymore. So the Seahawks did it now, got maximum return, because next year they would have had to trade him to a team that would have had to pay him walking through the door. And the hesitation, and they had him on the ropes. That's Dick Fain and Dave Softy Mahler. I'm on with them every Wednesday at 6:10 p.m. Eastern, 3:10 p.m. Pacific. They did a great job of pushing Carroll on that point because at the end of the day, they weren't going to pay him what Mark Rodgers wanted, and they resented, I think, getting constantly backed into a corner by Rodgers, who was driving a very hard deal every time he went to the bargaining table on Russell Wilson's behalf.
No, I don't doubt any of that. I don't. And again, would they have made him the highest paid player in football? And the highest paid player in the history of football was what basically it's going to take. I don't doubt that. I don't think Seattle would have done that either. I don't. I don't think that. I think they would have entertained.
But they'd done it before. But that's the thing. They'd done it before, and they were going to be expected to do it again.
You're right.
I think they would have entertained it. We can't do it.
Right. I think they would have entertained, making him close to that guy. I do. Do I think they would have crossed the threshold of like, oh, wait, you are that guy and you get paid more than Rodgers and Mahomes and Allen? I don't. I don't think they'd want to do that with like those guys said, with the current age of Russell Wilson. But here, like, that's all goods and ifs and buts and candies and nuts. The fact of the matter is we don't get to that point because Russell Wilson did not want to be there. So it doesn't matter. They were more willing to make a future happen with Russell Wilson than vice versa. Russell Wilson's been trying to get out of there for the last 2 years. So they never really got to that conversation, nor was it never going to get there. It wasn't. And then I think you add on top of the fact that, like you said, they don't play him like those other guys. I think that all brought it to a head, and the fact that it's coming into the last year of the contract and all of that where, the time was now.
But see, when we say Russell Wilson wanted out, this is a great chicken and the egg question, football edition, because why does Wilson want out? Because Wilson thinks they really don't want me here. They don't want to use me the way that I want to be used, and I've been banging my head against the wall for the past 3 years. When we see what Patrick Mahomes can do, when we see what they're doing with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, when we see what they pivoted from in Buffalo the first 2 years of Josh Allen's career to come year 3, the offense runs through Josh Allen. I've been asking for that for a decade now, and it worked with the Legion of Boom. It worked when you had Marshawn Lynch. But the Legion of Boom goes bust, and Marshawn Lynch is gone, and they've never been able to replace him, but they keep playing Russell Wilson the way that they always have. That's where I think, even if he's the one who articulated the thought, and if he's the one who began the process of the conscious uncoupling with his performance on the Dan Patrick Show last year, with the things his agent said, I mean, he instigated it publicly.
Yeah.
But he can say, I'm only doing it because they're not acting like they want to use me the way that they're paying me. And this isn't sustainable. They're not going to keep paying me this way if they're not going to use me the way that the money would suggest. So that's why I think he believes it was mutual, because there's something fundamentally wrong. And I don't mean wrong like right or wrong, fundamentally off with how the Seahawks were managing having a franchise quarterback. They were paying, it's like paying for a Ferrari and driving at 10 miles an hour. That's what they were doing. And at some point, the Ferrari wants to go faster than 10 miles an hour.
I know. Again, we've talked about this a lot. I look at Seattle, it's a defensive head coach who wants to play a certain style of football. We went down that road. Things went good, like we talked about in the 2020 season. And, we hit a few game stretch where Russell didn't play as good, and it's like Pete Carroll and company chickened out, and they said, okay, that's it. We're going back to the old way. I get that. Now, I also will say sometimes I think the thought crosses my mind, too, that, I'm not going to lie, that maybe Russell Wilson doesn't do the things those other guys we talk about do in practice to instill the confidence to let him be that guy. I will say Russell Wilson, in my opinion, is not as good as Mahomes or Josh Allen or Aaron Rodgers. He's not them. And that's where I'm really interested to see where this goes. How much does he thrive with, okay, you got the weapons, we got a pretty good offense here. Now where are we going to go? Show me you're one of those guys. And I think that's going to be one of the more fun things to watch. I know he's awesome. I get that. But I will say, how awesome? And I definitely have questioned to go, wait, can he carry a team like Allen and Mahomes? I have. That's gone through my mind at times. It has. There's a difference in, those guys are expected to carry the team week in, week out, period. The organization is literally constructed around them and their talents, and they play through that. Now, Russell Wilson, as much as it's frustrating and we want to see, let Russ cook, at the same time, he got to be ultra conservative in games and decision-making and go, our defense will keep us in it. I won't have to make any plays maybe until the fourth quarter until we really have to. Those guys didn't necessarily have that luxury either. So that's where it's going to be, a good litmus test for Russell Wilson.
This is going to be the ultimate be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah.
You wanted this, Russ. You've got it. And in past years, we saw him play 6 games against teams in the NFC West, 2 against the Cardinals, 2 against the Rams, 2 against the 49ers. This year, we're still going to see him play 4 games against teams in the NFC West because this is the year 1 out of every 4 where the Broncos and the rest of the AFC West play every team from the NFC West. And that's important because if it is a fundamental difference, it's going to show up when they play the Rams, the Cardinals, and the 49ers. We're going to see it. And he's now partnered with Nathaniel Hackett, who knows a thing or two about an offense that runs through a franchise quarterback.
That's
so,
right.
This is where, again, this is what I go back to. Why did the Seahawks keep paying the guy? If they really believe he's not Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, why do you keep paying him? And if they think deep down he can't get it done at that level, we're going to find out this year. We're going to find out because this guy's 33, 34 years old. This isn't some guy who's 24, 25 who is still ascending. He is who he is.
Yes.
The question is, have the Seahawks gotten enough out of who he is?
Yeah.
And can the Broncos get more out of who he is?
Right.
That's what's fascinating about this.
Yeah.
Very fascinating about it.
No doubt. No doubt.
Right.
It's going to be fun to watch.
Also, Pete used the I had no intention of making a trade. I mean, we now know that the day he said at the scouting combine, we have no intention to trade Russell Wilson, they were working on a trade of Russell Wilson to the Broncos. They were working on it when he said it. So my take that this is basically, hammering the for sale sign into the front yard, they're already negotiating with a buyer when he says we have no intention to trade Russell Wilson. So pay no attention to the man behind the curtain ever. What you hear from a coach, a GM, an owner, anyone connected to a team is quite possibly not true for strategic reasons. We're not saying these people are congenital liars. It's just there are reasons to say what they say, and we know that they were working to trade Russell Wilson, regardless of who wanted out. They were working to trade Russell Wilson when they said they have no intention to trade him, Chris.
Yeah, well, yeah, we know that. I mean, don't listen to a coach at a press conference during that time of the year. It's a waste of time. They're full of crap, and they got to do what's best for them, and they don't tell the truth.
But I hammer that point because the next time it happens, the fan base of that team is going to be, you're crazy. Exactly what the Seahawks fans said to me when we said exactly what it means. When Pete Carroll says we have no intention to trade Russell Wilson, media that cover the Seahawks fans, you're crazy, you're nuts, you're wrong, you're trying to speak this into existence, all sorts of BS. No, we've seen it time and again. We see the patterns, we recognize the patterns, and we try to share them with you.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.